Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today for SNAP's Tips and Tricks from Fundraising Professionals. My name is Ingrid Delamas. I'm the Director of Philanthropy and External Relations for the Epilepsy Foundation of San Diego County, as well as this year's SNAP Chair. And for those of you who are not aware, SNAP is the seasoned network of advancement professionals, essentially those of us who are CFREs or who have been professional fundraisers with 10 years or more of experience. If you or someone you know is interested in becoming a SNAP member, please reach out to me or Katie and we will get you on our list. For today, we wanted to discuss fundraising as both an art and a science, and how we all have our own styles of fundraising. We also learn from each other. Today, we've brought together some experts from our own AFP chapter to share some of the lessons they've learned in the years in their fundraising professions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat and we will address as many as we can after each speaker and again at the end. I'd now like to introduce you to Jeannie Schmelzer, who's today's moderator. She will introduce our speakers who will each share some valuable tips and tricks. After they speak, we'll have some time to break out into small groups to further discuss what we've learned and share additional information. Jeannie Schmelzer is an Executive Vice President with Netzel Gritzby Associate. She provides strategic fundraising solutions to nonprofit organizations and institutions throughout California. With more than 35 years of experience, Jeannie's passionate about helping nonprofits reach their highest potential and is committed to making a positive and lasting impact in the communities she serves. Jeannie's professional excellence and service has garnered her numerous accolades over the years. She received the 2016 Spirit of Carol Siegelman Award as the Outstanding Development Professional in North San Diego from the North County Philanthropy Council. She was also the 2016 Women Who Mean Business Award recipient, sponsored by the San Diego Business Journal. And in 2017, she was the Outstanding Fundraising Professional by AFP San Diego. Jeannie's a certified fundraising executive, CFRE, and has been an active Rotarian since 1991. She's a past president and board member of AFP San Diego and currently serves on the board of the North County Philanthropy Council as president-elect and YMCA alumni board of the Marston chapter as campaign chair for the YMCA of the 7 Council Fires in South Dakota. Jeannie resides in Escondido and holds a Bachelor of Business from National University. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie.
Thank you, Ingrid, and welcome to everybody on the call today. Nice to see so many friendly faces and some new faces too. I'd like the opportunity to introduce you to our exemplary panelists. First, Dawn Wenzel is Vice President of Development at Reality Changers, where she oversees fundraising, communications, and volunteer management. She has more than 15 years of experience in nonprofit management and fundraising at local and national organizations across the United States. She has had the privilege of working alongside nonprofit funders, CEOs, and executive directors, building development teams from the ground up. As a former public school teacher, Dawn is passionate about education and considers herself a lifelong learner. She's earned her CFRE in 2016, attended the AFP conference in 2018 as a Chamberlain Scholar, and is a graduate of Lead San Diego's Impact Program. In her free time, she enjoys volunteering with local organizations. Currently, she's the board of directors for the Downtown San Diego Lions Club. Dawn will be discussing today how to best set your team up for success. Our next panelist, Mark Legace, has greatly enjoyed using his 18 years of experience in philanthropy to help individuals experiencing homelessness, further strengthening families in need, and protect children from abuse. For 11 years, he served as the individual gifts manager of the San Diego Rescue Mission. Since 2016, he has been the director of philanthropy for Home Start. Mark considers himself an ambassador and advocate for more than 17,000 families and children served by Home Start annually. His goal is that every San Diegan will be aware of their life-changing services and how to get involved. Next, I'm sorry, still continuing with Mark, is also an active member of AFP, San Diego chapter. He served on the board for 8 years, including as president in 2019. Hobbies include hiking, going to the beach, participating in community events, and seeing movies. And he also loves to travel. Mark will be sharing the importance of recognizing different communication and work styles and how they can benefit the team as a whole. Next, we have Wendy McKinney, trusted leader in nonprofits and for-profit businesses. She has mastered how to prioritize work, family, and life services. As the former Chief Development Officer for the American Red Cross in San Diego, the San Diego History Center, former Development Director for Neighborhood House Association, she raised millions to benefit the San Diego region. As a former financial services executive for AIG, she successfully led the sales and marketing team for over 30 years. She has trained hundreds in leadership through conferences, retreats, motivational speaking. She has earned a bachelor's degree in economics from UCLA and a nonprofit executive leadership certification from the University of Michigan. She and her husband live in San Diego, where they co-pastor a thriving local Christian ministry. Wendy and her husband, Pastor George, have 3 adult children. And Wendy has also just authored a book, which I heard her presentation at San Diego Rotary, and I encourage you all to step up and get that book. Wendy will be discussing IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, and how to make our workplaces more inclusive to benefit our entire team. And the 4th panelist, Mary Rose McDermott, is the Director of Philanthropy at Rady Children's Hospital, supporting the Peckham Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders. She has over 20 plus years of philanthropy experience, with the majority of this time raising millions of dollars for cancer initiatives. As a cancer survivor herself, Mary Rose is passionate about connecting donors who can impact research, patient care programs, and education for the next generation of healthcare leaders. Mary Rose relocated to San Diego 5 years ago from Buffalo, New York. She's been an active member of AFP for over 15 years, having served on both the board of the Western New York chapter and now in San Diego. She loves all the San Diego community and has to offer, including arts, beaches, and diverse cultures. Mary Rose will be sharing tips of leading by example. So we will get started first with Dawn Wenzel. Thank you so much to the panelists for putting together this presentation today.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. I'm going to cover a few topics at a high level. As you're going to hear from most of us, we could probably do individual 1.5 hour long sessions on each of our topics, so we're going to keep pretty high level, but I'm looking forward to the breakout sessions where we can maybe dive in a little bit deeper. So the first one we're going to talk about today is weekly feedback. So why would weekly feedback be important? Weekly feedback gives future managers the opportunity to practice giving and receiving feedback, which we all know is an important skill for managers to have. It gives the employee an opportunity to pause and reflect on wins and challenges from the previous week, because as we all know, we're so busy and we often forget or are not intentional about carving out time to celebrate those wins. And these wins and challenges that are shared during this time could be personal, depending on the relationship between the employee and manager. They don't always have to be professional. And then one of the, I would say, last and very important reasons why to do weekly feedback is it eliminates surprises from the annual performance review. No one likes surprises. And so weekly feedback really does clear up that as you're engaging in a conversation each week about what's going well, maybe what's not going well. So those are all the reasons why it's important. And you'll see on the screen here about the structure. Let me just walk through this here. I do this on a weekly basis. This is a part of our check-ins. So the employee prepares feedback for themselves and the manager. The manager prepares feedback for themselves and their employee. And both of the individuals should share positive and constructive feedback for themselves and their manager. So what this would look like is typically the employee will go first. They'll share what went well for them, maybe what didn't go so well the previous week, and then share where they thought their manager did well and where they could have used more support from their manager. And then the manager would do the follow suit. One of the things I do here is I keep a document with all the feedback that's given on a weekly basis. So it's really, once again, it makes it really easy when it comes down to performance reviews because I have all my wins, I have what all my employees' wins are, and it's easy to put together those performance reviews. I'll say this also, be adaptable. After all I've said all this, it sounds like a lot of structure, but you have to be adaptable. Typically, the employee, when you first start doing this, is going to struggle giving constructive feedback to their manager. It's not a normal thing. I do push my employees to do this. Sometimes the feedback I give them is that they need to give me more feedback. I am not perfect, and there usually are some obvious things I could have done better the previous week. Answered an email more quickly, so I didn't hold up a project, communicate I wasn't going to be available during maybe a critical time when they needed support, and the list goes on. I continue to model how, or you should continue to model how you reflect and give yourself feedback. And it should become more easy to do, but this is all built on trust. And you're going to hear this a lot in my slides. A lot of this, as long as you've built a relationship built on trust, this should make it easier. If not, this is going to continue to be difficult. And I do have a resource on my last slide for those who continue to feel like feedback is really uncomfortable and they don't feel like they're growing in this area. There are plenty of people who agree and are continuing to work through that. Katie or Adriana, can you go right back to the slide right before? One more thing. Additional ideas there for about weekly priority, before I actually jump into weekly priorities. I say this whole slide says weekly feedback. You don't have to maybe do weekly feedback. So I have employees with me, sometimes we've been together for a couple of years. We don't do weekly feedback. We don't feel that it's necessary at that time, but we still are very intentional about doing feedback, at least on a monthly basis. Still make sure you're carving out that time to do that. And if you are going to do this as part of your check-in, I highly recommend you do it at the beginning of your check-in so you don't run out of time or rush through the feedback. Or if you know that you're going to have some maybe challenging feedback to give the employee, set up a separate time to do that. And then the weekly priority idea here is, if you're checking in, you're going through weekly feedback, you may find it really helpful to also share what your weekly priorities are as a manager. So we typically do this for our employees, like we want to make sure that they're prioritizing the right thing that week, but sometimes they don't know what a vice president of development probably does. And so if I mention that maybe I'm going to a meeting with a foundation representative or I'm creating a budget, I may have an employee where it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds really great. I'd love to either be a part of that, or could I hear more next week how you approach that process? So there's natural professional development that's built into the weekly feedback and weekly priority idea. All right, next slide. Let's talk about managing up, middle, and down. If possible, build the relationships from the beginning. Also, we all know it's never too late. At Reality Changers, all employees have meet and greets with staff within their first 90 days as part of their onboarding. We have more than 20 people within the organization, so I work with our director of people operations to prioritize who they should meet with first based upon their role and responsibilities. These are informal meetings. They can be done over coffee, lunch, a walk, hang out in a conference room. And it's really more just to connect on a personal level. What's your background? Why are you here? How might we be working together and supporting each other? I would say then the next thing about managing up, middle, and down is be curious. And I put this on the slide because it's a really nice way of saying, don't assume. Don't assume what someone's going through personally, professionally, and why they may or not be answering your email or your call or whatever it might be, or they didn't get something to you on time. Be curious, learn, observe a person's working styles and habits, ask questions. Hey, I asked for that information to be sent to me by the end of day Wednesday, and I didn't get it till Friday. Is there anything I could have done differently so that I could receive it by, my deadline? I do a lot of this coaching with my team as they work with CEOs, which leads me to the last point here is pull and support when needed. I was going to say, I'd like to brainstorm potential challenges and solutions with my team members and have them try different strategies. So my team is made up currently of 3 managers. So things come up since all of them need to work together to complete projects, but technically no particular person on the team within the 3 managers can tell each other what to do. And they don't manage each other. I'm their manager. So I see this come up within teams and also within the organization when they're trying to get other things done with other parts of the organization. So I consider myself the last person to jump in. So if we've talked about all the different things that maybe we could ask this person or learn their working styles and all the things and it's still not working out, then yes, you should definitely pull in your manager or supervisor to help you figure out what else you can do so you get a different result. And the last piece I'll touch upon really high level is navigating the new hybrid workplace. So I was only in my role for 4 months at Reality Changers when we were all told to go start working from home. I have worked remotely for organizations, so it wasn't difficult for me to make the transition and transition my team to working remotely. What I learned quickly, though, is that I was really the only person within the organization that had this experience. So most of the managers were struggling and didn't know what to do, especially when it all became apparent to us that 2 weeks was going to actually turn into very long months. So if you go to the next slide, one of the things I see here is like best practices. So I didn't put these on the slide, but what I did I've already shared one of them with you is I shared with everybody that you should put in place weekly feedback. A second one that I recommended was daily huddles. And I'm not going to talk about this here, but there is in a book, which is on my resource slide called Scaling Up. And that may be really something that would work for your organization. And then the third best practice has 2 parts: flexible scheduling and transparency. And what I mean by this is I put everything on my calendar and I encourage people to put everything on their calendars. Planning on taking a lunch break at 12 p.m., put it on your calendar. You're going to join AFP's webinar from 12 to 1:30 today, have it on your calendar. You need to go run out and pick up your kids from school, put it on your calendar. This really, once again, gets rid of a lot of assumptions of where people are, what they're doing, why they didn't answer your email, why they didn't get to your, data pull, whatever you needed. I got a lot of this from working closely with founders and CEOs and wondering myself, why aren't they getting my work done? Where are they? What are they doing? Why didn't they answer my email? I really need that question answered. And I found out oh, well, they're really busy. They have really crazy calendars, some of these individuals. And so I learned quickly that I needed to look at calendars, plan my work around their availability instead of assuming they were somehow going to fit me into their busy schedules. And this very much connects with that second bullet point about figuring out working styles, which I think Mark is going to touch a little bit upon in terms of communication styles specifically. Find out they're a morning person. Do they work on weekends because they have other commitments during the work week? How do they like to be congratulated or celebrated? Ask those questions. Be curious. And last but not least, model what you want to see. So for complete transparency, I'm the only person at my organization that does weekly feedback with my team, but that doesn't stop me from bringing it wherever I go and doing it currently where I work. I feel like it is very important as it sets up the culture that is positive, celebrates wins, and encourages collaboration. If anyone were to look at my calendar next week, it looks crazy. I have a haircut next Tuesday afternoon. I have a doctor's appointment Wednesday morning. I'm at a half-day retreat on Thursday, and plenty more. But my team can see that. They can see where I'm going to be, what I'm doing, when I may not respond to an email or a message that they send me. And it's vice versa. They do the same with their calendars as well. And I also know with all of this, it's always much easier to do a lot of these things when you work someplace where the leadership models this. And so I'll call out our CEO. She does this as very well. She models what she wants to see. And so I'm able to do that and do that for my team as well. So the next slide I have here is resources, which I know is going to be shared out, and there's links here. I want to say none of the information I shared is my own. I have learned this along the way from books or people in my life, great mentors and managers. So the first resource I have here is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She's the one who really talks about the feedback and working styles and building teams. Highly recommend that book. She has a second book I haven't read yet, so can't recommend that one yet, but definitely check out Kim Scott. Scaling Up, shout out to Just in Time. They just did I think they're the first nonprofit that went through their program. But Scaling Up is a great book. It's more corporate focused, but there's some great ideas that really very much should be used in nonprofits. Of course, YMPN and AFP are great resources. Subscribing to newsletters and use LinkedIn. Mentors, I think you may hear, or you probably already know, AFP has a mentorship program here in San Diego. You should apply. You should be a part of the program. And then that last link there is the feedback link that I was talking about in terms of if you're struggling with feedback. And I would be disappointed in myself if I didn't do one last plug. I apparently have an open position on my team. I'm hiring for a volunteer manager. And so if you are really interested in joining my team, or you know somebody who'd be a good fit, please check out Reality Changers. We have more information on our website. That's all I have for right now. Thank you so much. It was great sharing all this with you, and I look forward to seeing some of you in the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your input. And next we have Mark Legase on communication and work styles.
Great. Thank you, Jeannie. And thank you, Don, for that excellent start off for us. So my name is Mark, and we've been doing a lot the last couple of years, especially of coaching and learning different styles of management communication. And when this opportunity came up to share some tips, I thought this would be a perfect setting to hopefully share a little bit about what I've learned and wrestled with, in the hopes that we can all bring these back to our respective agencies and help our amazing mission. So we could advance to the next slide. Great. So first up, I put these little cartoons. They're not exact fits, but I just think it might help us kind of discuss this whole idea of why examine different communication styles and work styles. And I guess at the end of the day, everybody's different. And I think especially when you're a kid, maybe when you're first starting out in your career, I know I used to think that you don't know that other people are wired differently from you. You don't know what you don't know. You're you, your whole world revolves around you. And then you get out into school, and then especially in the real world, and everybody is different. And there's no right or wrong. I want to clarify this before my presentation. We'll talk about different styles, and there's not one that's bad, one that's good. It's amazing, because if we were all the same style, guess what? We'd be struggling and we wouldn't be able to achieve our mission. So I put two examples here. One is with the board member, and this was a few years ago. You'll see the caption there. Before we reposition ourselves as industry leader, how was everyone's weekend? Anyone doing anything fun? And my natural gravitation is to catch up with coworkers, with board members, with donors, and kind of start out that. I want to know how your family is. I want to know if your dog who was sick last week is better. That's just the way I gravitate. And we had a board member who just was kind of in a different mindset. She would just say, hi, let's start the meeting. And initially it was a little bit challenging getting used to that. And she would even share, and we laughed about it subsequently, she'd share that people would take her style as meaning she didn't care. And that was not the case. Her style, as we'll get into in a little bit, was simply that she wanted to kind of get down to business. She wasn't interested in the fluff, so to speak. And at another point in the day, she might ask about your family, et cetera. It didn't mean she didn't care. So I had to kind of learn that, as did other people, that look, it's different styles. Similarly, and how this could play into effect with all of us, but the chief financial officer example. So there's a little there's a little caption here. We don't need your origin story every week, just give us the numbers. And that hopefully makes you laugh a little bit. Over my years of working with the fiscal team, especially in the world of fundraising, right, there are partners, we need a lot of information, a lot of data from them. We need to ask about budgets regularly. And what I found out again over the years learning is that, those team members don't like a lot of words. And I tend to be a little more, communicative and expressive. So I was actually got this feedback, which we talked about earlier from Don, but I was saying too many words and I was driving them crazy. And that wasn't ultimately doing anybody a favor. I wasn't getting what I needed. They were frustrated by what I needed. At the end of the day, it wasn't helping me help children and families. So I've had to learn, it's an ongoing process, right? That again, everybody having different styles, and we'll get to that next slide. That less words and just more numbers, I have to adjust that, and in hopes that along the way they might adjust their, it's a two-way street. So you can see why I put these two examples. And the last one I'll share is with a donor. But for example, if we have some of our major donors that we may work with, or foundation contacts, they may be of a different style or mindset, like we've talked about. And if they see me if they see my phone number pop up on their phone, and this, particular donor, I want to be sure I understand how he prefers or she prefers to be communicated, or they prefer, because I want them to think, if they're more of the example of the board member who's more straight to the point, I don't want to annoy them every time I reach out to them by spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes on their family and their weekend. Whereas other donors, you kind of want to learn them. They might appreciate that and expect that. So that's why this is all relevant. Next slide, please. We could have the next slide. Great. So, and again, just some real world examples and type of interactions we can think of. The donor I already mentioned, staff you supervise, again, and Don kind of mentioned that this is relevant. If you have a staff member or even your supervisor, as I put there, again, you're going to learn how to work alongside better with your respective people that we come into contact with every day. That ultimately, you know, if we can work better with our supervisor, with the staff we oversee, consultants, some of you in smaller shops, we have a smaller shop, so I work with a lot of consultants that have to kind of be on my team. And again, I have to understand how we can best work together to be most effective. Another thing that might come up as you delve into this, again, this is higher level today, but I hope it sparks some interest. But sometimes you'll start to think about these styles in terms of family members, and especially with significant others or maybe your children. And it just kind of might help you understand those particular relationships, these complex relationships beyond the workplace, and can be helpful with some of these tools that we'll talk about in a moment. And I put on the slide other ideas for breakout sessions that we can talk about shortly. So that's hopefully the why this is important to wrestle with and some real world examples. The next slide, please. Okay, so this isn't going to be a whole presentation on the DISC. If you're familiar with the DISC assessment, basically you'll see here, DISC is just one of the tools that we've used at HomeStart, and there are many out there, and we'll talk about a little bit more shortly. But it's just a tool to help improve teamwork, communication, and then productivity in the workplace. And it basically helps us learn how we each respond to certain situations, how we influence others, and how we respond to coworkers. What's interesting is we did this assessment here at HomeStart, and we had a facilitator, and we kind of put everybody around the room organized in different corners about each of these categories, people in each category. Again, please remember that being in one category isn't negative, being in another category isn't positive. Each of these categories brings something to the table. And honestly, a team is most effective when you have a variety of people bringing their individual skill sets and preferences. So what we did is we went around the room and we looked at folks that were dominant oriented, and you can see some of their characteristics here. And so we talked about which people in an organization it would be good to have someone who's focused on results oriented, who's direct. We talked about people who are more in the influence category, outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic. For myself, I landed in the high I and high S steadiness categories. So we talked about how that's good because I love sharing my enthusiasm and my optimism for the life-changing work here done at HomeStart with donors. And you can see how that would be helpful as I'm communicating the need for funders and donors to support us. Conscientiousness, high Cs, you want to have those be able to be the analytical folks, the systems folks that bring me back down to earth when I'm too high in the sky on all these great things we're doing. And then the steadiness piece, again, you can see there, tactful. So again, each of these brings a strength to the table, that categories. And I just wanted to pause a minute here. Is anyone maybe familiar with the DISC and has shared it just for a moment, a couple of sentences on how it's helped them, or how you think this could be practical or has been practical in your respective agency? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Mark, I'll share if there's no one putting their hand up, but I know when I was with the YMCA, this was really critical because we had so many employees and so many supervisors, and the understanding what you're like helps you in communicating with others. And we did it with the senior leadership. At one point, there were 120 of us at a retreat, all senior level directors, so to speak. And it was so helpful because in some cases, we didn't work with them directly, but indirectly we did. And there were times when we did get together, and it was very, very helpful to actually manage relationships as well as understanding where people were coming from.
Right.
It just gives you a little bit of background to help you understand and to be more effective in what you were doing for your organization.
Thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, that's exactly how I've been seeing some of this information used. And again, it's not a magic bullet, but this type of information and focus on these tools can be helpful in forming those conversations. And like Jeannie said, ultimately help us all work together as a team to serve our mission. And we're all on this call, we're all in this profession because there's important missions that we feel passionate about. And you know, if we can use something like these tools to help us be more efficient, more effective, then why not? So, and let's look at the last slide, please. And so again, this is still very, you know, high level, looking forward to diving deep, but I wanted to make sure, and this is in the resource sheet at the end also, that there's several different tools. There's no one size fits all tools. Several of these are free. And then you can dive deeper into, you know, certain more, having maybe even a consultant come in, but you don't have to spend any money to start with most of these. So we talked about the DISC assessment, talked about strength. Well, we haven't talked about strength finders. Strength finders is another powerful tool where there's basically these researchers over the years have identified 34 core strengths. And when you take them, there's a link to the book in the resource sheet, but you basically, you're ranked your top 5 strengths. And again, that's going to help you understand what each person on the team can bring to the table and what different scenarios you might ask for support from one person versus another because of their respective strengths. And again, they're all strengths, but each strength, also the book will talk about in their research, has kind of a dark side. So it's been interesting for me. For example, I have positivity as my number 1, which is great. There's many things that, you know, that's how I'm wired and it is good. But there's also times when I, you know, if my mom is not feeling well, or if there's something negative, it can really weigh me down. So it's a good exercise, not only for a helping team, but it's a good self-awareness exercise as well. The Myers-Briggs, I saw a couple of comments pop up where there's a lot of assessment tools available on that. And again, similarly, can help you understand how you're wired, how your team is wired. The Enneagram, some of you know, are familiar with that piece there. And I see Don waving a book with the Enneagram system. And again, another tool. And then, but I don't want to, the top right here, asking your team. Don't forget, and Don is a good reminder of this, don't forget to just ask people. Like, you can ask your team, how do they like to be recognized? You know, one time we were kind of doing a lot of verbal recognition for someone doing well, and they really preferred just a gift certificate to Starbucks, you know, kind of an example. So you can just simply ask, and some of these questions as a small step. You don't have to dive in and sign up for 5 assessment tools and hire some big consultant. So any other ideas or tools that people have used? Just wanted to open up the floor again, or any thoughts, and then we'll wrestle with this more deeply in the breakout room. But did I hear someone unmute?
Hello, I can unmute. I put it in the chat for those who are following along visually, but I worked for an organization where we did strengths finders, and we had the whole team do it, both development staff and program staff. And then at the end, we had a little printout, like a half sheet of paper with our top 5 strengths, and we all taped them next to like our computers at our desk. So it was fun if you know, visited people's cubicles to see their strengths, you know, much later on than the training day. So I thought I would share that because I enjoyed it very much.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And maybe one last thought before we turn it on. Any others? No? Okay. Well, I'll look forward to hopefully wrestling more. But again, the idea is that hopefully this sparked 1 or 2 ideas that you might be curious about learning more of. And feel free to reach out to me either in the breakout room or after this. I love to chat about this more and brainstorm together. And just hopefully there's a tidbit or 2 you've learned today that'll help you work and be more efficient for the amazing missions each of one and all of us are part of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Great information. And we're going to go next to IDEA in your team, and it's by Wendy McKinney.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you for that plug for my book, which is called Busy Doing What? Making Every Moment Count, available on Amazon. A little shameless plug there. So thank you, and thank you, Don, for really setting the stage for my presentation. And Mark, I love the presentation as well, which some of those behavioral styles helped me with my marriage, believe it or not. So everybody should definitely jump into that if they can. So I want to talk to you about IDEA in your team. So you can go to the next slide, please. Why IDEA is important to your team's success and how to create a more inclusive workplace. And you'll see me building off of, like I said, Don's presentation and touching a little bit on some of the things that Mark mentioned as well. And we know that IDEA is probably one of the most sensitive concepts in history right now. There's so many challenges with different structures, with employee relations, with our communities, that this is so important. And I'm glad to be able to share my personal experience and my personal approach as I want to share with you my management style and how to create a more inclusive workplace. I've been managing teams for a long time, and people have asked me, Wendy, what is your management style? And as I thought about it, it really lends itself to creating a very productive and healthy team for that supports IDEA. So let's go to the next slide. What is IDEA? And we won't obviously go into the details. Everyone is very familiar. This is a high-level presentation. Inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And I love Vernee Myers' description, Vernee Myers of Netflix, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, but diversity is being invited to the party. And she says inclusion is being asked to the dance, which I love to dance, I love to party. So this is perfect, a perfect quote for me as I talk about my management style. Next slide, please. So my management style is managing by fear. Managing by fear. Just take that in for a second. Yes, most people say, oh my God, what is she, a tyrant? No, not at all. Yes, fear is an acronym, and it's going to look very similar to Dawn's first. And these are the letters, the words that go with each of the letters. Feedback, expectation, acknowledgement, reward. And so it's actually fear, because I added another R there. And that last one is respect. So let's talk about that. I believe that our team members are people before they are employees. They're people first. And Dawn and Mark actually touched on, really approaching people and understanding they have personal issues in life. They have certain things that they're dealing with. And quite obviously, all of us are different, as IDEA explains and supports. So this feedback session is super important. And I believe that this feedback, and we're talking about transparent, honest feedback. This is a private session, as Dawn mentioned, where you can really have an open space and a safe space for your team member to talk to you about these sensitive issues that relate to inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility. This is the perfect opportunity. And oftentimes we don't provide regular feedback. I love hearing Dawn say weekly feedback when it's appropriate, and consistent feedback. And the next one is expectation. There's nothing worse than being on a job and being a part of a team and no one gives you outlines to your expectation. You think you're doing well, you think you're doing great, and bonus time comes or performance evaluation comes, and you're like, what? I need to improve in this area. No one ever told me this. So this is a perfect opportunity to talk about expectations and to really create language, even around those sensitive areas about inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility. Make sure that this is an opportunity where they can feel comfortable, where again, we talk about creating an opportunity for trust and integrity. This is where you let your guards down so they can understand their job more specifically. They can understand their contribution to the team. They can understand that their differences in this safe space can be communicated and accepted and explored. So I love the expectation piece. It also gives you an opportunity, as Dawn mentioned, uncovering assumptions. You make the team member makes an assumption oftentimes, and the leader, the manager, often makes assumptions. But here is the opportunity to get things clear, to put things out on the table, and to really understand each other a lot better. And what you're doing is building this relationship so that you're not uncomfortable talking about some of those personal sensitive matters that we're talking about as we talk about IDEA. And the next one is acknowledgement. And I'm a natural cheerleader. So I love when we talk about acknowledgement. And this is where we can either privately acknowledge or publicly in a team meeting, or in even a larger space to acknowledge our team members as we talk about the success that they've had in exploring our differences, our similarities, strengths, opportunities. And this is the opportunity to recognize them and appreciate them. Again, building that relationship, again, creating a space for them to be comfortable and sharing their vulnerabilities. It also gives you an opportunity for them to share their space or their voice as it relates to inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. The next one is reward. And from a management perspective, first of all, I like to talk about a reward as something that we give our employees that goes above and beyond their paycheck. Everybody gets a paycheck, of course, but when we want to acknowledge them, again, creating this environment for them to feel safe and to communicate, we want to give them rewards, whether it's, and I heard Mark mention this in another aspect, but whether it's a gift card, whether it's some professional development opportunities, whether it's a class, maybe this is an opportunity where they can present a sensitive topic related to diversity, related to inclusion. So this is an opportunity for them to share in the reward. The other part of reward is, how do we all benefit as an organization? What is the reward to us as an organization, as a team, and as an individual when we come together and share differences, and when we come together and talk about our strengths? And I love an example I use is on the Red Cross, we had about 5 different team members working on some donor projects. So for example, we would go out and do thank you visits to donors. So one of the team members was like the best and the most creative at coming up with ideas. Some of them were kind of over the top where we're like, nah, we're not going to do that. But some of them, but we gave her the space to be creative. And then another teammate was very good at project management. So she really put it all together and organized which doors, who we were going to see first. Then there's another teammate who was really good with data and helping us to understand data. And then there's another one who was just really strong with relationships. So this is an example of taking differences and strengths and opportunities and putting them together. And what happens is those sensitive conversations about race, about religion, about sexual orientation, those come out because now we're more comfortable with one another. Now we're a team, we're working together. There's not, this animosity or this fear or this threat. Now that we've built this team that's solid and that communicates. And the last one is respect. And this obviously is the big one, especially as it relates to us being different and sharing these differences. And I think empathy really says it all. Empathy is the word that says, I don't understand exactly everything that you're sharing with me, but I'm going to accept what you're sharing with me. I'm going to evaluate it. I'm going to be sensitive to it because I too have things that you may not understand that I want to share with you. So we want to be empathetic with each other, and we want to respect each other's differences. When we say something or share something, we're not shocked or we're not upset, or we are sensitive to one another, and we want to encourage and foster an environment that encourages them to be open and honest. So I just wanted to share all of those: feedback, expectation, acknowledgement, reward, and respect. And if your manager can employ these 5 points, this should bring about a very safe space and a great team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was great. Really enjoyed that. And just another plug, be sure to get her book. It's really good. Next, we have Mary Rose McDermott as our last and final panelist, and she's going to be sharing on leading by example. Mary Rose?
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you to the other presenters. It's been great today. I'm just going to try to wrap it up and talk a little bit about what you can do to lead by example for your team and different skills that you can learn. Next slide. So what I like to do when in my career is really try to model myself after my leaders that I have worked with. So from them, I've been able to learn skill sets, that I can take on to while I'm managing other people. And so I've kind of broke it down into two groups, like leaders that I've admired and challenging leaders that I don't really admire, but I can learn from them what I don't want to be. So for admired leaders, I mean, I've always really kind of gravitated towards somebody that has been confident, and confident in that they are able to share with you, what the vision is, where your team is going, but also sometimes being confident if they make a mistake. If something does go wrong, which we all know happens. Like yesterday, I sent out the incorrect date on a meeting notice, that you're confident in correcting the error and moving forward and just apologizing and making it right. Having an open door policy, and this is like twofold. Number one, actually having your door open. I always get very frustrated when I have a leader, and every time I want to go, say something or ask a question, that I'm kind of knocking on the door. I feel like I'm invading their privacy, or that I'm, not part of the team. But also being open door in that when you go in to talk to a leader, that they're encouraging, that they are willing to kind of listen to what either your issues are, or a problem that you have, or to share maybe a strategy that you'd like to implement. And I've always gravitated towards a leader that really encourages collaboration. I mean, we all like to work in a team. We all like to kind of move projects forward. And so really kind of modeling that from some of the people that I have reported to in the past. Supportive, I think we've kind of touched on, and then keeping up with the latest practices. It's always been more beneficial to be with a leader that really kind of understands how our profession has changed, keeping up with the different lingo that's part of what we do, and really trying to energize and bring kind of new ideas as you're moving through your philanthropy and talking to donors. And really important is fostering professional development. I've worked with some leaders that, really encourage me to go to a conference, help me get there, even just, giving time to attend an AFP meeting like this, and really trying to really grow yourself professionally, no matter where or what level that you're on. And one of the most important things that I think is really standing up for your team members. And I have a couple of great examples when we get to the next slide. Now let's talk a little bit about those challenging leaders that you might have and things that you can learn from them that you don't want to do as you're a manager, or if you have a team that is working for you. And I think the first thing is really trying to not keep your team members as silo people. It's very difficult if you're the only person that reports to the leader and you don't really have much collaboration with the other team members. I really feel like all of our work can move forward much quicker if we all work together. And so really trying to be a very collaborative leader. And I think we've all been in the situation where we've been belittled or shut down with new ideas. I know I've had leaders where it's been a struggle, where it's like, oh, I've got this great idea, and you walk in their door and you're very excited about it, and you really think it has the potential to make an impact, and they're like, I don't want to hear it. I mean, that's just going to take too much work. I mean, I don't think we can do this. And that's fine. I mean, I understand that definitely could not fit into the strategy for the year, but it's just refreshing when a leader will kind of just listen to you and say, oh, I kind of like that idea. Can you maybe put it down on paper as a formal strategy? It's something maybe we can incorporate next year. And I think, it just feels like then you can come with new ideas, and you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I got this great idea, but if they're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to bother. And it is important not to take credit for other people's work. I know a lot of leaders will kind of just say, I've done this. And it's just been so much more inspirational when you're with a leader and they'll say, oh, Mary Rose worked on that and she's done such a great job, where I know she could have easily taken credit for it, but, having somebody that really kind of stands up for you and, kind of showcases the work that you're doing. I think we all don't like micromanaging leaders, and especially in the day and age now where we're working remotely, like I can see most of us are. But really, if you are managing other people kind of, and I think, went back to some of the other different presentations we've had this morning, is not micromanaging and really kind of letting your people do what they need to do to get the job done. an atmosphere of uncertainty, not setting priorities, and demanding too much. I mean, again, all ideas that you just don't want to have to deal with as an employee, and really as a leader should be focusing on not doing these types of things. And again, going back to demanding too much, I've always thought that, everyone has a very full plate. And of course, everyone's trying to add more to your plate. And I think it's really about being communicative and being open, and going to your direct report and saying, I'd love to take on this project, but, just so you know, if I take on this project, there's just other things I cannot get done. And I think it's just being very transparent that, there's just so much time and so much capacity to get things done. But if I think you're open about it and really communicating that, this is what I have on my plate, this is what I can get done, what do you feel is the priority? So again, going back to some of the things discussed before, is there's no surprises when you come down to your review and they say, well, you didn't get this done. And one time I said, well, I didn't get this done because you gave me X, Y, Z, and A. And, well, I couldn't. So, I'm focusing on these things that I did that were very productive, that raised a lot of money for the organization. And therefore, these other things didn't happen. So, I mean, it has to be a checks and balances. All right, next slide. Let's talk about some real world examples and some different examples that I've had leading teams and reporting up to a team leader. So all the names have been changed to keep the innocence of all the people I am talking about, although you probably don't know them anyways. So Elizabeth was an intern of mine. She worked with me for about 6 months. She had 2 separate internships that she had taken on to be part of my team. And she was really great skill set, really dynamic, got the job done, really wanted to learn. Everybody on my team really loved her. So about the time that Elizabeth's internship was ending, we had a level 2 position open up on my team. And so I immediately went to my direct report and I said, I really think we should interview Elizabeth for this position. She fits great in the team. She's already worked with the team. And I mean, I could just go on and on and on. Well, my direct report just shut that down. She said, we worked hard to get this as a level 2 position. Elizabeth is not a level 2 at this point, and, she's not even qualified to interview. So I really tried to change her mind about this, but I was really not having much luck. A couple of days later, Elizabeth comes in to actually work as the intern that day. And she found out from the other team members that we had this open position now. And she came to me and said, I want to interview for it. And I told her what had happened with my direct report. And she said, well, I want to go in and talk to her. And I said, fine. I said, I think she's open right now. We checked her calendar. I says, and I will go in with you. So we marched right into my supervisor's office, and Elizabeth pitched her case. I again repeated everything I had said before, and my supervisor said, look, I'm free in a half an hour. I will interview Elizabeth for a half an hour, but that's all I'm giving you. So we rushed back to my office, Elizabeth and I prepped her, we pulled her resume, we talked about what she should talk about. She went into the interview. A few minutes later, or about a half hour went by, she came out with this big smile on her face. And lo and behold, a couple of days later, she got the job. Well, I was really excited for Elizabeth, but what I found with the team is that I had stood up for Elizabeth and really kind of had her back through all this, and she wasn't even a paid employee. And so all of a sudden there was this like new dynamic in my team that I felt like, they really respected me, I respected them, and it really helped kind of solidify us and really helped in all the strategies we had been working on, and moved a lot of the work forward, where I saw everyone was a lot more collaborative after that incident. So let's talk about Dr. James. I'm sure you all work with different CEOs and VPs. Dr. James was a very prominent surgeon at the hospital I worked at. One day I got a call into the executive's office, and she said to me, I want you to start working with Dr. James. He has some really great ideas to raise some funds, and call him up and have a meeting. She goes, I will tell you though, she goes, he is very difficult to work with. And I walked out of the meeting and I thought, well, I mean, I don't know that. I've met him on occasion. We've passed. I says, but I kind of want to find out my own opinion. So I went back to my team and I said, we're going to start to work with Dr. James. I guess he has some strategies. He needs to raise some money for research. And they all said the same thing to me. Well, I heard he was very difficult to work with. And I said, look, let's have an open mind. I'll go meet with Dr. James. I'll see what he wants to do. I'll come back and, let's decide for ourselves what it's like to work with Dr. James. So I went to meet with him. He had some great strategies, some ideas he had from other surgeons that he knew in different organizations. And so I went back to the team. We talked about them. He was very open to meeting with us as a team as we were trying to move some of these things forward. And in the end, we raised a lot of money for Dr. James. And as we were trying to wrap up some of the projects that we were doing at one of our team meetings, my team member said, you were right. We should not have had this preconceived notion of Dr. James. And she said to me, I'm not going to do that again. When I am introduced to somebody, I'm going to go in open-minded and kind of make my own opinion. So I thought that was a really great example for my team. And again, Dr. James was wonderful to work with. Now, Gina was one of my employees. We had hired her to do annual fund. She was fabulous. She could analyze the data. She had a real kind of intuition about where to move new projects, new initiatives. So I was really excited to have her as part of my group, but I noticed she had no soft skills. And in what she was doing, she didn't necessarily need them, but I really felt she needed soft skills to move forward in the organization. So one day at one of our one-on-one meetings, I said to her, I really would like you to start, kind of gaining some soft skills. I says, I think you should be interacting a little bit more with some of our donors. And I thought maybe if you could make some thank you calls and do some outreach, really kind of just low key. And I said to her, I had a plan to kind of help her where I said to her, you can come sit with me while I'm doing thank you calls. So you can kind of learn the language, kind of learn, some phrases and things you can say as you're doing it, how to leave a really kind of eloquent voice message. And she was really open to it. She was excited. She's like, oh, that would be really great. She goes, I'd really like that. So a couple of days later, one of the vice presidents called me into her office and she said to me, that's not Gina's job. I heard that you want to teach her something that we don't want her to be doing. And I was like, why wouldn't you want somebody to make a thank you call? And I said to her, and I know that Gina's a really good employee. I says, we want to keep her. We want to, have her keep moving up in the organization. And the only way she's going to do that is to learn some soft skills. So the VP said to me, fine, you can do it, but I don't want to know. And I don't want it to take away from her work, which I said, I promised it wouldn't. So I sat with Gina for a while. She got to be really good at thank you calls. She got to be really good with donors. Donors were seeking her out at events, which was so nice to see. Just a couple of weeks ago, Gina hasn't worked for me for many years. And a couple of weeks ago, I was on LinkedIn and I saw Gina got a big promotion. She is now director of stewardship and legacy giving. And so I immediately picked up the phone to call her up and I said, congratulations. And she said, oh my God, I'm so glad to hear from you. She said, I would not be here where I am today if it wasn't for what you did for me when we worked together. And that just really made me feel really good that I really made a difference for someone, not just while I was working for her, but that kind of carried through her lifetime. Now, I want to talk a little bit about George. George was not a good leader that I worked for. He was good to me in certain senses, and I, was able to learn from him, but he did have some very interesting habits that were not good for our team. So one day, George calls me into his office and he said, there's a professional conference coming up. And he said, I do not want to go, but I think some of the sessions would be really good for you. So I'm going to send you. Now, I was really excited about going to this conference. It was very prestigious, but I should have realized in the back of my mind that there was a protocol for people going to the conference. You had to have so many years experience. You had to be at a certain level in your job title and with the team. And so I guess I kind of forgot that, I really wasn't qualified according to the priorities to go to the conference. But anyways, I was excited to go. Well, little did I know that the team was not happy that I was selected to go to the conference and no one knew why. So it really got to be a little controversial and I couldn't figure out why the team members were not being responsive to me and collaborative. And then one of them did mention, well, I don't understand why you're going to the conference. And I explained what George had said to me, but at that point I realized that George should have told the team why he had selected me to go to the conference, and maybe explained that, next year somebody else would be able to go. So I really felt it was a real miss for George as a leader to not be more collaborative and communicative to everyone about what was happening, because it just really made some bad kind of vibes between all of us. And I felt bad because, again, I was really excited to go, and, I didn't choose to go, and I didn't ask to go. So I really blamed George for most of that team dynamic after that point. So those are just some people that, I've worked with, and I hope you'll be able to pull just a couple of ideas from what I've interacted with them. But just, again, think of all the leaders you worked for, kind of the person that you report to now. Think of the things you really like about working with them and the things that you don't necessarily like, and really kind of use that information as you move forward and you're become a leader or lead your team as we move through this year and the upcoming years. So thank you again to everyone for being a part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back to Jeannie, and I think we're ready to hopefully kind of go into breakout rooms.
Thank you, Mary Rose, and thank to all the panelists. What a wealth of information to share with our group today. And now we're going to go into breakout rooms, and you can see you're going to be able to select which room you want to go into, either setting your team up for success, communication and work styles, IDEA, and leading by example. Katie's going to put those up for you to choose. And once you do that, you'll be in the breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. This is a chance for Q&A, maybe share some of your experiences in these areas with the group. And then we'll come back together for the last 10 minutes to just follow up and get your feedback, see what you liked. And we look forward to seeing you all in about